My name is Thomas Waverly, and I've been married to a liar for 6 months longer than I realized. The revelation came on a Wednesday morning, over coffee that tasted like betrayal and toast that crumbled like my faith in human decency. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start with Tuesdays, because Tuesdays were when my wife became a saint. My sister's kids are sick. She's overwhelmed, Kristina announced that first Tuesday evening, grabbing her purse with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd rehearsed the moment. Amanda really needs help with the little ones. I looked up from my laptop, where I'd been debugging code for a client's security system. IT consulting pays the bills and keeps my brain sharp, which turned out to be more important than I knew at the time. Help her, I said, because that's what decent husbands say when their wives want to assist family members in crisis. Take whatever time she needs. Kristina smiled that radiant smile I'd fallen in love with 8 years ago, the one that made her hazel eyes sparkle like she'd discovered something wonderful. She kissed my forehead, her auburn hair brushing against my cheek. You're the best, Tom. I'll probably be late. Amanda's really struggling with both kids having the flu. Drive safe, I called as she headed for the door. Tell Amanda I said hi. The door closed with a soft click, leaving me alone with the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of Mrs. Beale's television bleeding through our shared wall. Our neighborhood in Cleveland's Lakewood district was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business, except apparently I didn't know my own. That first Tuesday, I felt proud. My wife was the type of person who dropped everything to help family. Her sister Amanda had 2 young kids and a husband who worked nights at the steel plant. When crisis struck, Kristina stepped up. It spoke well of her character, I thought. The second Tuesday, I ordered pizza and watched a documentary about cybersecurity. Kristina returned around 11, exhausted but satisfied. How are the kids? I asked. Better. Amanda's getting the hang of managing them both while they're sick. It's just overwhelming when they're both down at once. The third Tuesday, I invited our neighbor, Mr. Resnick, over for beer and poker. He's retired from the fire department and has opinions about everything from municipal politics to the proper way to grill bratwurst. Your wife's a real saint, he said, shuffling cards with hands that had pulled people from burning buildings. Every Tuesday, like clockwork, off to help the family. My ex-wife wouldn't cross the street to help her own mother. Kristina's special that way, I agreed, feeling that warm glow of marital pride. By the 6th Tuesday, the routine had crystallized. Kristina would announce around 5 o'clock that Amanda needed help with the sick children. She'd pack a small overnight bag sometimes, explaining that Amanda might need her to stay late or even overnight if the kids were particularly difficult. Emergency. Familial obligation calls her to her sister's assistance, I joked to Douglas Finch, my attorney friend, over lunch one Wednesday. Overwhelmed motherhood apparently requiring weekly intervention that only sibling support can provide. Douglas raised an eyebrow over his sandwich. He's one of those lawyers who looks like he stepped out of a 1940s film noir, complete with sharp suits and sharper wit. Every Tuesday? That's remarkably consistent for childhood illness. Kids get sick, Amanda's husband works nights, Kristina steps in. It's actually pretty admirable. Douglas said, which in lawyer speak means, I'm filing this information away for future reference. The Tuesday routine continued through autumn and into winter. Kristina would receive a call from Amanda around 4:30, always with the same breathless urgency about the children's condition. Always on Tuesday. Always requiring Kristina's immediate assistance. I started calling it the Tuesday emergency in my head, with the kind of dark humor that keeps IT professionals sane when dealing with clients who think computers run on magic and good intentions. Compassion. His response praises her devotion to extended family, I muttered to myself one evening, mocking my own nobility while heating up leftover Chinese food. The reliability of her Tuesday commitments evidence of character he always admired. Mrs. Beale cornered me at the mailbox one Thursday afternoon. She's 73, retired from teaching middle school, and possesses the investigative instincts of a seasoned detective. "Your wife sure is dedicated to those sick children," she said, sorting through her pension statements and grocery store circulars. "Every single Tuesday for months now. Those poor kids must have the worst immune systems in Ohio." Something in her tone made me pause. Mrs. Beale had raised 4 children and taught thousands more. She knew the rhythms of childhood illness. "Kids get sick," I said, echoing my standard response. "Mm-hmm." She gave me the same look she probably gave students who claimed their homework was eaten by dogs. Remarkable how it's always Tuesday, though. Most germs don't keep such regular schedules. That night, I found myself staring at the ceiling while Kristina slept beside me. Her breathing was deep and regular, the sleep of someone whose conscience was clear. I tried to remember the last time Amanda's kids had been sick on any day other than Tuesday. I couldn't. The realization hit me like a system crash at the worst possible moment. In my line of work, patterns matter. Anomalies in code usually indicate bugs. Anomalies in behavior usually indicate something more troubling. Tuesday, March 15th. Kristina's phone rang at 4:27. I watched her face transform into an expression of concerned urgency that I'd seen dozens of times before. "Oh no, Amanda. Both of them again? Of course I'll come over. Tom won't mind." She looked at me with those sparkling hazel eyes. "Amanda's overwhelmed. The kids are really struggling today." "Help her," I said automatically, though something cold was beginning to form in my stomach. After Kristina left, I sat in my home office staring at lines of code that suddenly seemed less important than the patterns forming in my personal life. 26 Tuesdays, 26 emergency calls, 26 trips to help with sick children who seemed to have the most predictable illness schedule in medical history. I picked up my phone and dialed Amanda's number. "Tom?" Her voice carried surprise. "Is everything okay?" "Hi, Amanda. I was just calling to check on the kids. Kristina said they're having a rough day." Silence stretched across the connection like a cable about to snap. "What kids, Tom? My kids are fine. They're doing homework. Why would Kristina say they're sick?" The world tilted sideways. "She said you called about them being overwhelmed, that you needed help tonight." "Tom, I haven't talked to Kristina in 3 weeks, and my kids haven't been sick since before Christmas. What's going on?" I stared at my computer screen, where error messages were flashing in red text, but they seemed insignificant compared to the error message now flashing in my brain. "Amanda, this might sound strange, but have you ever asked Kristina to help with sick kids on Tuesdays? Any Tuesdays?" "Never. Tom, you're scaring me. Where did Kristina say she was going?" "To your house, to help with your sick, overwhelmed children." Amanda's sharp intake of breath carried across the phone line. "Tom, I work Tuesday nights at the hospital. I'm never home Tuesdays. The kids stay with my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, until Robert gets home from his shift." The error message in my brain turned into a full system alert. "Amanda, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Has Kristina ever mentioned dinner plans with me? Plans that involved you?" "What? No, Tom. What are you talking about? What dinner plans?" But I already knew the answer. There were no dinner plans. There were no sick kids. There was no overwhelm. There was just my wife, somewhere else, doing something else, with someone else. Disruption. Her sister's voice carries confusion when his call inquires about dinner plans, I whispered to myself. A confusion that deepens when he mentions the sick children she has never reported. "Tom? Tom, are you still there?" "Yeah, Amanda, I'm here. Listen, don't mention this conversation to Kristina yet, okay? I need to figure some things out first." "Tom, what's going on? Where's my sister?" That was the question, wasn't it? Where was my wife every Tuesday evening when she thought she was safely covered by a story about sick children and overwhelmed sisters? I don't know, Amanda, but I'm going to find out. The investigation began at 6:47 a.m. on Wednesday morning, with coffee that tasted like determination and a laptop that was about to become my best friend. 26 Tuesdays, 26 lies, 26 evenings when my wife had been somewhere other than her sister's house, helping with children who weren't sick. Verification. No illness afflicts his niece and nephew. No overwhelm burdens his sister-in-law. The emergency exists only in the architecture of his wife's deception. I said this aloud to my reflection in the bathroom mirror while Kristina showered, testing how the words felt in my mouth. They tasted like ashes and revelation. My background in IT consulting had taught me that data doesn't lie, even when people do. Every digital device leaves footprints. Every transaction creates records. Every movement generates location data if you know where to look. I started with our cell phone account. Kristina had left her phone charging on the nightstand, a habit that used to seem endearing. Now it looked like evidence waiting to be collected. I opened our wireless carrier's website and logged into the account management portal. Location services, data usage, call logs, the digital breadcrumbs of a marriage that was apparently built on more fiction than I'd realized. The location history painted a very different picture than the one Kristina had been showing me for 6 months. Every Tuesday evening, her phone pinged cell towers that were nowhere near Amanda's house in Parma Heights. Instead, the data points clustered around an address in downtown Cleveland's warehouse district. I cross-referenced the address with Google Maps. High-end apartment complex, the kind of place where young professionals with good salaries and flexible morals might maintain residences. Investigation. 6 months of Tuesdays now demand examination. A pattern of consistent absence that constructed itself one fabricated crisis at a time. I pulled up our joint credit card statements, searching for charges that might correlate with the location data. There. Parking garage fees for the warehouse district. Restaurant charges from establishments within walking distance of the apartment complex. Wine purchases from a boutique shop that definitely wasn't near Amanda's suburban neighborhood. Every Tuesday for 6 months, like clockwork. The shower stopped running. I closed the laptop and tried to arrange my face into an expression that wouldn't give away the fact that I'd just discovered my marriage was a lie. Kristina emerged from the bathroom wrapped in the blue towel I'd given her for Christmas, her auburn hair dark with moisture. She looked exactly like the woman I'd married, except now I knew she was also someone else entirely. "You're up early," she said, kissing my cheek with lips that had been lying to me for half a year. "Couldn't sleep. Big project deadline coming up." She nodded and began her morning routine, the same sequence of actions I'd watched thousands of times. Moisturizer, then foundation, then the careful application of makeup that transformed her from sleepy wife to polished professional. I watched her prepare for another day of living a double life, and I marveled at how easy it seemed for her. "I might be late tonight," she said, applying lipstick with practiced precision. "Big presentation tomorrow. The team wants to do a final review." "No problem. I'll grab dinner with Douglas." She smiled at me in the mirror. "You're the best, Tom." The words hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. After Kristina left for work, I called Douglas Finch. "I need legal advice," I said, without preamble. "Good morning to you too, Thomas. What's the crisis? Did one of your clients finally realize that their password shouldn't be password 123? My wife is having an affair." Silence. Douglas doesn't often find himself speechless, but apparently discovering that your friend's marriage is a fraud will do it. "How certain are you?" 26 Tuesdays certain. Location data, credit card records, and a sister-in-law who confirms that the sick children my wife has been helping don't exist. Ah, the Tuesday emergency wasn't so emergency after all. The Tuesday emergency was cover for the Tuesday affair. "Have you confronted her?" "Not yet. I want to document everything first. If this goes to divorce court, I want evidence that would make Perry Mason weep with joy." Douglas chuckled, but it was the dark humor of someone who'd seen too many marriages implode in his office. Smart man. What do you need from me? Legal guidance. I want to know exactly what I can and cannot do while gathering evidence. I want this done right. Come by my office at lunch. Bring everything you found so far. And Thomas? Yeah? I'm sorry. I know this isn't how you wanted to spend your Wednesday morning. But he was wrong. This was exactly how I wanted to spend my Wednesday morning, and every morning after that, until I had enough evidence to bury my lying wife and whoever she was lying with. The apartment complex in the warehouse district was called Harbor Point, and it was exactly the kind of place where affairs went to flourish. Upscale, discreet, with underground parking that kept residents' vehicles hidden from prying eyes. I drove past it on my way to Douglas's office, noting the security cameras and the keycard access points. Getting inside would require more than just curiosity and righteous anger. Douglas's law office occupied the third floor of a converted warehouse in Ohio City, with exposed brick walls and windows that offered a view of Lake Erie. His secretary, Mrs. Kowalski, had been guarding his schedule for 30 years and possessed the protective instincts of a mother bear. "He's expecting you," she said, waving me toward his office. "And honey, whatever's going on, Douglas will fix it. He always does." Douglas looked up from a stack of legal briefs as I entered. His office was exactly what you'd expect from a successful attorney who'd grown up reading detective novels. Dark wood furniture, leather-bound law books, and a bottle of good whiskey in the desk drawer for clients who needed liquid courage. "Show me what you've got," he said. I spread the printed location data, credit card statements, and call logs across his desk like evidence in a murder trial. Which, in a way, they were. The murder of my marriage, committed with premeditation and malice aforethought. Douglas studied the documents with the focused attention of someone who'd built a career on finding truth in the midst of lies. "This is solid," he said finally. "Location data is admissible. Credit card records show a pattern of deception. The sister's testimony about the sick children's story establishes intent to deceive." "What about surveillance? Can I follow her?" "Legally? You can observe your wife in public places. You cannot trespass on private property or install tracking devices without consent. You cannot hack into her personal accounts or record conversations without her knowledge, depending on Ohio's consent laws. What can I do?" Douglas leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers in a gesture I'd seen him make countless times when he was about to deliver advice that would change someone's life. "You can document, you can observe, you can gather evidence of marital misconduct that will be relevant in divorce proceedings, but Thomas, you need to be smart about this. Don't let anger make you stupid." "I'm not angry," I said. Douglas raised an eyebrow. "Really?" I considered this. "Okay, I'm furious. But I'm furious in a very organized, methodical way. I want to destroy her lies with facts. I want to demolish her story with evidence. I want her to understand that she picked the wrong husband to betray. There's the Thomas I know. Channel that fury into documentation. Make it so comprehensive that when you finally confront her, she'll have no choice but to admit the truth." I gathered up the papers, feeling like a general planning a campaign. "One more thing, Douglas. When this is over, I want her to understand that actions have consequences. I want whoever she's been seeing to understand that too. Legal consequences, Thomas. We're officers of the court here, not vigilantes. Of course, legal, social, and financial consequences. The kind that follow people around for years." Douglas smiled, and it wasn't entirely pleasant. "Now you're thinking like a lawyer. Go gather your evidence. Document everything. And Thomas, when you're ready to confront her, call me first. I want to make sure you do this right." That evening, I sat in my home office staring at a map of downtown Cleveland with Harbor Point circled in red ink. Somewhere in that building, my wife was living a second life with someone whose name I didn't even know yet. But I was going to find out. I was going to find out everything. Surveillance. Her phone's location history paints a different geography than sisterly assistance. Coordinates that resolve to addresses her family tree doesn't include. Tomorrow was Tuesday. For the first time in 6 months, I was looking forward to it. Tuesday arrived with the kind of gray March drizzle that makes Cleveland feel like the edge of the world. I'd spent Monday evening preparing for what I privately called Operation Tuesday Truth, which sounds dramatic but felt necessary. The plan was simple. Follow Kristina, document her actual destination, and gather photographic evidence that would make denial impossible. I'd borrowed a friend's car, charged my phone's camera, and mentally prepared myself to see my wife's affair with my own eyes. At 4:15 p.m., I parked across the street from Kristina's office building in downtown Cleveland. Her company, Meridian Solutions, occupied floors 12 through 15 of a glass tower that reflected the gray sky like a mirror. I'd been there for company parties and holiday gatherings, playing the role of supportive husband while she networked with colleagues whose names I was now viewing with suspicion. At 4:47 p.m., Kristina emerged from the building's lobby, walking with the purposeful stride of someone who had somewhere important to be. She wasn't alone. The man beside her was tall, probably 6'2", with the kind of build that suggested regular gym attendance and careful attention to protein intake. Dark hair, expensive suit, and the confident posture of someone who'd never doubted his own appeal. He was exactly the type of man I'd expected, which somehow made it worse. They walked together toward the parking garage, their body language speaking a language I didn't want to understand. Not touching, but moving in sync. Not obvious, but intimate in a way that made my stomach clench. I followed at a distance as they retrieved their cars. Kristina's blue Honda Accord, which I'd helped her pick out 3 years ago. His silver BMW, which probably cost more than I made in 6 months. The convoy headed west toward the warehouse district, just as the location data had predicted. I stayed back, using skills I'd learned from too many detective movies and a healthy dose of righteous anger. Harbor Point Apartments, 37 stories of glass and steel, housing the kind of people who could afford to maintain secrets. The BMW disappeared into the underground garage. Kristina's Honda followed 30 seconds later. I parked across the street and waited. At 6:23 p.m., they appeared on a balcony 14 floors up. I could see them clearly through the telephoto lens I'd borrowed from my photographer neighbor. Kristina had changed out of her work clothes into jeans and a sweater I'd never seen before. The man had removed his suit jacket and tie. They were drinking wine. They were laughing. They were standing close enough that I could see him touch her arm, while making some point that seemed to amuse her greatly. I took 47 photographs. Identification. Her co-worker's apartment complex accepts her vehicle every Tuesday evening, timestamps spanning half a year of therapeutic visits to children who never coughed. I spoke these words aloud in the empty car, my voice steady despite the fact that my hands were shaking with rage. At 8:15 p.m., I drove home and printed every photograph. Clear, damning, undeniable evidence that my wife's Tuesday emergencies had nothing to do with sick children, and everything to do with her affair with a man whose name I still didn't know. But I was about to find out. Wednesday morning arrived with sunshine that felt like mockery. I woke up next to my lying wife, who stretched and yawned and smiled at me like she hadn't spent the previous evening in another man's apartment. "Sleep well?" she asked, kissing my cheek with lips that had been somewhere else. "Like the innocent," I replied, which was either irony or prophecy, depending on your perspective. After Kristina left for work, I called Meridian Solutions and asked to speak with someone in human resources. "This is Jennifer Walsh, HR Director. How can I help you?" "Hi, Jennifer. This is Thomas Waverly, Kristina Waverly's husband. I'm organizing a surprise party for her birthday next month, and I was hoping to get contact information for some of her close work friends." "Oh, how thoughtful. Kristina's such a sweetheart. Let me pull up her team directory. Particularly anyone she might spend time with outside of work. You know how it is. Work friendships that turn into real friendships. Well, she works closely with Stephen Caldwell in sales. They collaborate on a lot of projects. And there's Maria Santos in marketing, though I think Maria just had a baby. Oh, and the whole customer success team adores her. Stephen Caldwell. Finally, a name for the man who'd been helping my wife destroy our marriage. Stephen Caldwell sounds perfect. Could you give me his contact information? I can give you his work email, but I can't share personal information. Company policy. Of course. Work email is fine. I hung up with Stephen Caldwell's email address and a plan that was beginning to take shape like a storm system on a weather map. LinkedIn provided Stephen's professional history: regional sales manager, Meridian Solutions. Previously worked for 2 other companies, both in sales roles. Graduated from Ohio State with a business degree, lived in Cleveland. Single, according to his relationship status, which was either a lie or about to become true in ways he didn't expect. I spent the rest of Wednesday gathering intelligence. Stephen's apartment was a corner unit on the 14th floor of Harbor Point. His BMW was leased through his company. He belonged to a gym called Iron Works, where he apparently spent considerable time maintaining the physique that had attracted my wife's attention. By Thursday afternoon, I had compiled a dossier that would have impressed the FBI. Stephen Caldwell, 38 years old, never married, no children, parents living in Columbus, sister in California. He made good money, drove a nice car, and lived in an expensive apartment that was apparently perfect for conducting affairs with married women. But what Stephen didn't know was that he'd chosen the wrong married woman to seduce. He'd picked someone whose husband had both the technical skills and the motivation to make his life very complicated. Thursday evening, I sat in my office staring at the photographs from Tuesday night. Kristina and Stephen on his balcony, wine glasses catching the light, their faces animated with conversation and laughter. They looked happy together, which was somehow worse than if they'd looked guilty. Documentation. Screenshots preserve the evidence. Location data compiling into a timeline that divorce attorneys will appreciate for its comprehensive clarity. I organized everything into a folder labeled Tuesday Files. Location data, credit card records, photographs, call logs, and Amanda's statement about the non-existent sick children. 6 months of lies, documented with the thoroughness of someone who'd built a career on attention to detail. Friday morning brought another performance from my wife, another day of living with someone who could lie to my face while asking me to pass the coffee creamer. "Any plans this weekend?" she asked, buttering toast with the casual ease of someone whose conscience was apparently made of Teflon. "Might catch up on some work. You?" "Quiet weekend. Maybe visit Amanda on Sunday, see how the kids are doing." The audacity was breathtaking. She was going to maintain the sick children story, even after 6 months of using it to cover an affair. She was going to look me in the eye and reference the fictional emergencies that had been providing her alibi. "Tell Amanda I said hi," I replied, "and give the kids my love." Of course. That afternoon, I called Amanda and asked her to meet me for coffee on Saturday. There were some things she needed to know about her sister, and some ways she could help me document the truth. "Is everything okay, Tom? You've been acting strange since that phone call on Tuesday." "Everything's going to be okay, Amanda. But first, we need to have a conversation about Kristina's Tuesday emergencies and why she's been using your children as cover for something else entirely." Saturday's coffee meeting with Amanda took place at a small cafe in Lakewood, far enough from both our neighborhoods to avoid accidental encounters with mutual acquaintances. Amanda arrived looking worried, her nurse's instincts probably telling her that this conversation was going to be more serious than she'd anticipated. "Tom, what's going on? You're scaring me." I showed her the photographs. Amanda stared at the images of her sister laughing on Stephen Caldwell's balcony, wine glass in hand, looking happier than I'd seen her in months. "Oh, Kristina," Amanda whispered. "What have you done?" "She's been using your kids as an alibi for 6 months. Every Tuesday she tells me you've called about them being sick and overwhelmed. Every Tuesday She goes to his apartment instead of helping you with children who were never sick in the first place. Amanda's face went through several expressions: shock, anger, disappointment, and finally a kind of grim determination that reminded me why I'd always liked my sister-in-law. What do you need me to do? I need you to help me document the truth. When she comes over Sunday and mentions helping with sick kids, I need you to make it clear that never happened. I need witnesses to her lies. Tom, she's my sister. And she's my wife. But she's also someone who's been lying to both of us for 6 months. She's been using your children as props in her deception. Doesn't that make you angry? Amanda studied the photographs again, her expression hardening. It makes me furious. Those are my babies she's been lying about. She's been telling people they're sick when they're perfectly healthy. What kind of person does that? The kind of person who thinks she can lie to everyone and never face consequences. Amanda folded the photographs and handed them back to me. What's the plan? Sunday afternoon brought Kristina to our front door with a bouquet of flowers and the kind of smile that had once made me feel like the luckiest man in Ohio. Now it just reminded me that I was married to someone who could perform sincerity like a professional actress. Ready to visit Amanda and the kids? She asked, adjusting the flowers in their wrapper. Absolutely. I'm looking forward to hearing how they've been feeling lately. The drive to Amanda's house in Parma Heights took 23 minutes, during which Kristina maintained a running commentary about work projects and weekend plans. She was relaxed, confident, completely unaware that she was about to walk into a conversation that would end her Tuesday routine forever. Amanda's house was a modest 2-story colonial with a front yard where her children, 8-year-old Emma and 6-year-old Michael, were playing with the neighbor's dog. They looked remarkably healthy for kids who'd supposedly been sick every Tuesday for 6 months. "Aunt Kristina," Emma called, running over to hug her aunt. "Look what I drew at school." Emma held up a crayon drawing of what appeared to be a family of dinosaurs having a picnic. She was clearly feeling well enough to engage in complex, artistic endeavors. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," Kristina said, and for a moment I saw genuine affection in her expression, which made what she'd been doing even more disturbing. Inside, Amanda had prepared coffee and cookies, arranging everything in her living room like she was hosting a normal family visit rather than an intervention about systematic deception. "The kids look great," I said, settling into the couch across from Kristina. "Really healthy and energetic." "They've been wonderful lately," Amanda replied, her voice carrying just enough emphasis to make Kristina glance at her with mild confusion. "That's good to hear," Kristina said carefully. "I know they've been struggling with those recurring illnesses." Amanda and I exchanged glances. "What recurring illnesses?" Amanda asked. The silence that followed was the kind that occurs when someone realizes they've just stepped off a cliff and gravity is about to become a serious problem. Kristina's face went through several micro-expressions: confusion, realization, panic, and finally, a desperate attempt to maintain the fiction that was collapsing around her. "The flu episodes," she said weakly. "When you've needed help on Tuesday evenings." "Kristina," Amanda said gently, "I've never called you about the kids being sick. They haven't had the flu since before Christmas. And I work Tuesday nights at the hospital, remember? I'm never home Tuesdays." Kristina looked between Amanda and me, her brain clearly working overtime to find an explanation that might salvage the situation. "You must be confused," she said to Amanda. "You've called me dozens of times about being overwhelmed when they're sick." Amanda shook her head slowly. "Kristina, I've never made those calls. My kids haven't been sick. I haven't been overwhelmed. I don't know where you've been going on Tuesday nights, but you haven't been coming here to help me." I watched my wife's face as the full scope of her exposure became clear. She was trapped between her sister's testimony and my obvious knowledge of the truth, with no escape route that didn't involve admitting to 6 months of systematic deception. "Tom," she said, turning to me with desperate eyes. You know I've been helping Amanda. You've seen me leave every Tuesday. I've seen you leave, I agreed. But you haven't been coming here. I pulled out my phone and showed her the location data from our wireless account. Red dots marking her Tuesday evening locations, clustered around Harbor Point Apartments in downtown Cleveland, nowhere near Amanda's house in Parma Heights. I've seen you leave every Tuesday for 6 months, I continued, but according to your phone's GPS data, you've been going to the warehouse district, specifically to an apartment complex called Harbor Point. Kristina stared at the phone screen like it was displaying her own execution warrant. That's impossible, she whispered. Those locations must be wrong. GPS doesn't lie, Kristina. Unlike people. Amanda leaned forward, her nurse's training probably telling her that someone in the room was about to have a medical emergency, and it wasn't going to be either of the children. Kristina, where have you really been going on Tuesday nights? But Kristina was staring at me with the expression of someone who'd just realized that the husband she'd been deceiving for 6 months was not the pushover she'd apparently taken him for. You tracked my phone, she said. I reviewed our family's cellular account, which I pay for and have every right to access. What I found was 6 months of location data that proves you've been lying to me about where you spend your Tuesday evenings. That's invasion of privacy. What's invasion of privacy is using your sister's children as fictional cover for whatever you've actually been doing. What's invasion of privacy is lying to your husband's face for half a year while he trusts you completely. Emma and Michael had wandered into the living room, drawn by the tension in the adult voices. They stood in the doorway, looking confused, which was appropriate since they were witnessing the destruction of several family relationships simultaneously. Kids, why don't you go play in the backyard? Amanda suggested gently. The adults need to finish talking. After the children left, Amanda turned back to her sister with an expression I'd never seen before. Amanda was usually the peacemaker in family conflicts, but apparently there were limits to her patience. Kristina, you've been lying about my children being sick. You've been using them as an excuse for something you don't want Tom to know about. That's not just lying to your husband. That's involving my family in your deception. I can explain, Kristina said weakly. Please do, I said. I'm very interested in how you explain 6 months of Tuesday evenings at Harbor Point Apartments when you told me you were helping with sick children who were never actually sick. Kristina opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again, and then seemed to realize that there was no explanation that would make this situation better. Tom, she began. You what, Kristina? You accidentally spent 6 months lying to me? You accidentally created an elaborate fiction about sick children? You accidentally drove to the same apartment complex every Tuesday for half a year? It's not what you think. Really? Because what I think is that you've been having an affair with someone who lives at Harbor Point Apartments. What I think is that you've been using your sister's children as cover for your Tuesday evening liaisons. What I think is that you've been lying to my face for 6 months while I trusted you completely. Kristina's face crumpled, and for a moment I thought she might confess everything. Instead, she stood up abruptly. I don't have to listen to this. You're being paranoid and controlling, and I won't be interrogated in my sister's living room. She headed for the door, but I was faster. Sit down, Kristina. We're not finished. Yes, we are. I'm leaving. Fine. But understand that when you walk out that door, you're confirming everything I suspect. You're admitting that you can't explain 6 months of lies because there is no innocent explanation. Kristina paused with her hand on the doorknob. And understand this too, I continued. I'm not the same man you've been lying to for 6 months. That man trusted you completely and never questioned your stories. This man has evidence, documentation, and a very clear understanding of exactly what kind of person he married. She turned around, and I saw something in her eyes that I'd never seen before. Fear. What are you going to do? I'm going to find out the truth. All of it. who you've been seeing, how long it's been going on, and what other lies you've told me, and then I'm going to decide what to do with that information. Tom, please, we can work this out. We can't work out 6 months of systematic deception, Kristina. We can't work out the fact that you looked me in the eye every Tuesday and lied about sick children while you went to meet another man. We can't work out the fact that you involved your sister's family in your lies. Amanda stood up, her face pale but determined. Kristina, I think you should leave now, and I think you should stay away from my children until you're ready to tell the truth about what you've been doing. Kristina looked between her sister and me, seeming to realize that she'd lost both of us in the same afternoon. This isn't over, she said. You're right, I agreed. It's not over. It's just getting started. After Kristina left, Amanda and I sat in her living room listening to her children play in the backyard, their laughter a strange counterpoint to the family drama that had just exploded in the front room. I'm sorry, Tom, Amanda said finally. I'm sorry my sister is, whatever she is. She's not your responsibility, Amanda. But I'm going to need your help documenting her lies. If this goes to divorce court, I want testimony from you about the sick children story. Of course. Tom, what are you going to do now? I thought about Stephen Caldwell sitting in his expensive apartment, probably unaware that his Tuesday evening companion's husband now knew his name, address, and place of employment. I'm going to have a conversation with Stephen Caldwell, and I'm going to make sure he understands that actions have consequences. Be careful, Tom. Don't do anything that could hurt you legally. I won't, but I'm going to make sure that everyone involved in this situation understands exactly what they've done and exactly what it's going to cost them. That evening, I sat in my home office compiling everything I'd learned into what I was starting to think of as the Tuesday Files, a comprehensive documentation of 6 months of lies, betrayal, and systematic deception. Tomorrow, I was going to start making phone calls to Stephen's employer, to his apartment management company, to anyone who might be interested in knowing that their employee, tenant, or colleague was involved in an affair with a married woman who'd been lying to her husband for half a year. Patience. He allows 3 more Tuesdays to pass, each absence adding weight to evidence that requires no additional construction. But I was done being patient. It was time for Stephen Caldwell to learn that he'd chosen the wrong marriage to help destroy. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp clarity that makes everything seem possible, including revenge. I'd spent Sunday evening planning my next moves with the methodical precision of someone who'd decided that being the bigger person was overrated. My first call was to Stephen Caldwell's direct line at Meridian Solutions. Stephen Caldwell, Regional Sales Manager. How can I help you? His voice was confident, professional, completely unaware that he was speaking to the husband of his Tuesday evening companion. Mr. Caldwell, this is Thomas Waverly. I believe you know my wife, Kristina. The silence that followed was long enough for me to count my heartbeats. When Stephen finally spoke, his voice had lost its professional polish. I'm sorry, who is this? Thomas Waverly, Kristina's husband, the man whose wife you've been entertaining at your apartment every Tuesday evening for the past 6 months. Another pause, this one even longer. I think there's been some misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding is on your part, Stephen. You seem to have misunderstood that married women come with husbands who eventually notice patterns, like the pattern of my wife lying about sick children while she visits your apartment at Harbor Point. Look, I don't know what you think is happening, but I know exactly what's happening. I have location data, photographs, and credit card records. I have 6 months of documentation that would make a divorce attorney weep with joy. What I don't have is patience for your denials. Stephen's breathing was audible over the phone line. What do you want? I want you to understand that actions have consequences. I want you to understand that you chose the wrong marriage to interfere with. And I want you to understand that your Tuesday evening entertainment is about to become very expensive for both of you. Are you threatening me? I'm informing you. There's a difference. I'm informing you that your employer will be receiving copies of evidence showing that you've been conducting a personal relationship with a married colleague. I'm informing you that your apartment management company will be receiving documentation of activities that may violate your lease agreement. And I'm informing you that everyone in your professional and personal life is about to learn exactly what kind of man you are. You can't do that. Watch me. I hung up and immediately called Jennifer Walsh in Human Resources at Meridian Solutions. Jennifer, this is Thomas Waverly again. I'm afraid I wasn't entirely honest about why I needed Stephen Caldwell's contact information. Oh, what's going on? I've discovered that my wife, Kristina, has been having an affair with Stephen for the past 6 months. I have documentation, including photographs and location data. I thought the company should be aware that 2 employees are conducting a personal relationship that involves systematic deception and may create liability issues. The silence was deafening. Mr. Waverly, these are very serious allegations. They're very serious facts, Jennifer. I can email you the documentation if you'd like to review it. Please do. We'll need to investigate this immediately. My second call was to Harbor Point Apartments Management Office. Harbor Point Management, this is Carol speaking. Carol, I need to report a situation involving one of your tenants. Stephen Caldwell in Unit 1447 has been conducting an affair with a married woman, and I have evidence that they've been using his apartment for their meetings. I thought you should be aware in case this creates any liability issues for the property. Sir, I'm not sure what you expect us to do about tenants' personal relationships. I expect you to be aware that your property is being used for activities that are destroying a marriage. I also expect you to be aware that I'm documenting everything for potential legal proceedings, and that includes the location where the affair has been conducted. We'll make a note in the tenant's file. You do that. My third call was to Ironworks Gym, where Stephen apparently maintained his physique. Ironworks, this is Mike. Mike, I need to speak with someone about member Stephen Caldwell. He's been having an affair with my wife, and I thought you should know that one of your members is involved in destroying marriages. Sir, I'm not sure what you want us to do about that. I want you to know what kind of person he is. I want everyone who interacts with him to understand that he's the type of man who seduces married women and helps them lie to their husbands. Sir, we can't get involved in members' personal lives. You're not getting involved. You're being informed. By noon, I'd made 17 phone calls to various people and organizations in Stephen Caldwell's professional and personal orbit. His employer, his apartment management, his gym, his insurance agent, his mechanic, and anyone else I could identify from his social media profiles and public records. Each call followed the same pattern: polite introduction, factual statement about the affair, and clear documentation that Stephen Caldwell was involved in destroying a marriage. At 12:47 p.m., my phone rang. Tom, this is Stephen Caldwell. We need to talk. I'm listening. Look, I think we got off on the wrong foot this morning. Maybe we can work something out. Work something out? Stephen, you've been having an affair with my wife for 6 months. You've been helping her lie to me every Tuesday while she pretends to care for sick children. What exactly do you think we're going to work out? I didn't know she was lying to you about sick kids. She told me you two had an arrangement. An arrangement? She told you I was okay with her spending Tuesday evenings in your apartment? She said you were separated, that you were working things out but living separately for now. I laughed, and it wasn't a pleasant sound. Stephen, we live in the same house. We sleep in the same bed. We share meals, conversations, and a joint checking account. Does that sound like separation to you? She said, she lied to you too, Stephen. She's been lying to everyone. The difference is that I'm her husband, and you're just the man who helped her destroy our marriage. Tom, I'm sorry. I really thought you two were separated. Your ignorance doesn't excuse your actions, Stephen. and it doesn't change the consequences. What consequences? Check your work email. Check with your apartment management. Check with everyone you've talked to today. You're about to discover that reputation is fragile and affairs are expensive. I hung up and called Douglas Finch. Douglas, it's time to file divorce papers. Already? I thought you wanted more evidence. I have enough evidence to bury her. What I want now is to make it official. I want Kristina served with papers at work, in front of her colleagues, so everyone can see exactly what happens when you lie to the wrong husband. Thomas, are you sure about this approach? It's very aggressive. Douglas, she looked me in the eye for 6 months and lied about sick children while she conducted an affair. She involved her sister's family in her deception. She made me complicit in her lies by asking me to support her fake emergencies. Aggressive is exactly what this situation calls for. All right, I'll prepare the papers. Irreconcilable differences, with a request for full financial disclosure and documentation of marital misconduct. Perfect. And Douglas, I want them served tomorrow. Tuesday. I want her Tuesday routine permanently disrupted. That evening, Kristina came home looking haggard and nervous. She'd probably spent the day dealing with HR inquiries and uncomfortable conversations with colleagues who'd heard about the affair allegations. Tom, we need to talk, she said, setting down her purse with shaking hands. I'm listening. Stephen called me. He said you've been calling his work, his apartment, everyone he knows. That's correct. You can't do that. You're harassing him. I'm informing people about the truth. There's a difference. Tom, please. I know you're angry, but this is getting out of hand. Out of hand? Kristina, you've been lying to me for 6 months. You've been having an affair while I trusted you completely. You've been using your sister's children as cover for your deception. What's out of hand is that it took me this long to discover what kind of person I married. She sat down heavily on the couch, looking older than I'd ever seen her. I never meant for this to happen. You meant for it to happen every Tuesday for 6 months. You meant for it to happen every time you looked me in the eye and lied about sick children. You meant for it to happen every time you kissed me goodbye before going to Stephen's apartment. I was confused. I didn't know what I wanted. You knew exactly what you wanted, Kristina. You wanted to have an affair while maintaining the security of marriage. You wanted to lie to everyone while keeping all your options open. You wanted to have your cake and eat it too. What are you going to do now? I looked at my wife, this woman I'd loved and trusted and built a life with, and felt nothing but contempt for what she'd chosen to become. I'm going to divorce you. I'm going to make sure everyone knows why. And I'm going to make sure that you and Stephen understand that destroying marriages has consequences that last longer than Tuesday evenings. Tom, please, we can go to counseling. We can work this out. We can't work out 6 months of systematic deception, Kristina. We can't work out the fact that you're capable of looking me in the eye and lying without hesitation. We can't work out the fact that you involved innocent children in your cover story. I'll end it with Stephen. I'll never see him again. It's too late for that. The damage is done. The trust is destroyed. The marriage is over. She started crying then, but they were the tears of someone who'd been caught, not someone who was genuinely remorseful. I'm sorry, Tom. I'm so sorry. I'm sure you are. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry there are consequences. You're sorry your Tuesday routine is over. That's not true, isn't it? Because if you were really sorry, you would have ended the affair months ago. If you were really sorry, you wouldn't have involved Amanda's children in your lies. If you were really sorry, you would have told me the truth instead of making me discover it myself. Kristina cried harder, but I felt no sympathy for her. She'd made her choices, and now she was going to live with the consequences. Tomorrow is Tuesday, I said. Your last Tuesday as my wife. Enjoy it. Tuesday morning dawned with the kind of brilliant sunshine that makes even Cleveland look beautiful in March. I woke up early, showered, dressed in my best suit, and prepared for what I privately called the final Tuesday. Kristina was already gone when I came downstairs. She'd left early, probably hoping to avoid another confrontation or maybe to warn Stephen about what was coming. It didn't matter. Everything was already in motion. At 9:15 a.m., Douglas called to confirm that the divorce papers were ready and the process server was standing by. "Are you absolutely certain about this, Thomas? Once we serve these papers, there's no going back." "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." "All right. The papers will be served at her office at 2 p.m. I've included a request for full financial disclosure, documentation of the affair, and a preliminary injunction preventing her from disposing of marital assets." "Perfect. Make sure it's done publicly. I want her colleagues to see exactly what happens when someone destroys their marriage with lies." At 10:30 a.m., I called Amanda to give her a heads up about what was happening. "Tom, are you sure about this approach? It seems so final." "Amanda, your sister looked me in the eye for 6 months and lied about your children being sick while she conducted an affair. She made you an unwitting accomplice in her deception. She involved your family in her lies. How much more final could this situation get?" "I know, but she's still my sister. And she's still my wife for about 4 more hours. After that, she'll be my ex-wife, and Stephen Caldwell will be welcome to whatever's left of her." At 11:45 a.m., I received a call from Jennifer Walsh at Meridian Solutions. "Mr. Waverly, I wanted to update you on our investigation. We've reviewed the evidence you provided and will be conducting formal interviews with both employees this afternoon. This is a very serious matter." "I appreciate you taking it seriously, Jennifer. Affairs between colleagues create liability issues, especially when one of them is lying to their spouse about the relationship." "We understand. We'll handle this appropriately." At 1:30 p.m., I drove to Meridian Solutions and parked across the street from the office building. I wanted to witness the moment when Kristina's carefully constructed double life finally collapsed completely. At exactly 2 p.m., a woman in a business suit entered the building carrying a manila envelope, the process server, right on schedule. At 2:17 p.m., my phone rang. "Tom, what have you done?" Kristina's voice was shaking with rage and panic. "I've filed for divorce. You should have received the papers by now. They served me at work, in front of everyone. Jennifer from HR was standing right there." "Good. I wanted your colleagues to understand exactly why your marriage is ending. I wanted them to know that you're the type of person who lies to her husband while conducting affairs with coworkers. You've humiliated me. I've exposed you. There's a difference. You humiliated yourself when you chose to have an affair. You humiliated yourself when you lied about sick children. You humiliated yourself when you made me complicit in your deception. Tom, please. We can still work this out. Read the papers, Kristina. Pay special attention to the part about full financial disclosure and the documentation of marital misconduct. Your affair is now a matter of public record. I can't believe you're doing this to me. I'm not doing anything to you, Kristina. I'm responding to what you did to our marriage. Every action has consequences. You're about to learn what those consequences look like. I hung up and drove home, feeling lighter than I had in months. At 4:15 p.m., Stephen Caldwell called. Tom, this has gone too far. Kristina is devastated. Kristina is facing the consequences of her choices, just like you're about to face the consequences of yours. What do you mean? Check your work email, Stephen. Check with your apartment management. Check with everyone you've interacted with today. You're about to discover that helping someone destroy their marriage is more expensive than you thought. You can't ruin my life because of this. I'm not ruining your life, Stephen. I'm documenting the truth about what you've done. If that ruins your life, it's because your life was built on helping someone else lie. Kristina said you two were separated, and you believed her because it was convenient. You didn't ask questions because you didn't want to know the answers. You participated in destroying a marriage because it got you what you wanted. I never meant to hurt anyone. But you did hurt someone, Stephen. You hurt me, you hurt our marriage, and you hurt Kristina's relationship with her family. The fact that you never meant to do it doesn't change the fact that you did it. What do you want from me? I want you to understand that actions have consequences. I want you to understand that you can't help someone destroy their marriage without facing repercussions. And I want you to stay away from my wife until the divorce is final. Tom, I'm sorry. I really am. I'm sure you are, Stephen. But sorry doesn't fix 6 months of lies. Sorry doesn't restore trust that's been destroyed. Sorry doesn't make any of this better. I hung up and poured myself a glass of the good whiskey I'd been saving for a special occasion. This seemed special enough. At 6:30 p.m., Amanda called. Tom, Kristina came to my house. She's crying and asking me to talk to you. What did you tell her? I told her that she made her choices and now she has to live with them. I told her that I won't be part of any more lies, and that she's not welcome around my children until she's ready to tell the truth about everything. How did she take that? She accused me of choosing you over her. I told her that I chose honesty over lies, and that she's the one who created this situation. I'm sorry you're caught in the middle of this, Amanda. I'm not caught in the middle, Tom. I'm on the side of truth. Kristina made her bed, and now she gets to lie in it, alone. At 8:45 p.m., Kristina came home looking like she'd been through a war. Her makeup was smeared, her hair was disheveled, and her eyes were red from crying. Tom, we need to talk. There's nothing left to talk about, Kristina. The papers have been filed. The truth is documented. The marriage is over. Please, I'll do anything to fix this. You can't fix 6 months of systematic deception. You can't fix the fact that you're capable of looking me in the eye and lying without hesitation. You can't fix the fact that you involved innocent children in your cover story. I made a mistake. You made dozens of mistakes, Kristina. Every Tuesday for 6 months. Every lie about sick children. Every time you kissed me goodbye before going to Stephen's apartment. Those weren't mistakes. Those were choices. She collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. What am I going to do now? You're going to find a lawyer. You're going to cooperate with the divorce proceedings. You're going to face the consequences of your choices. And you're going to learn that destroying marriages has costs that last longer than Tuesday evenings. I love you, Tom. No, you don't. You love the security I provided while you conducted your affair. You love having someone to lie to while you did whatever you wanted. You love having a husband who trusted you while you betrayed that trust completely. That's not true. Isn't it? Because if you loved me, you wouldn't have lied to me for 6 months. If you loved me, you wouldn't have used your sister's children as cover for your affair. If you loved me, you would have ended your relationship with Stephen the moment it started. Kristina cried harder, but I felt nothing for her tears. She'd made her choices, and now she was living with the consequences. I'm staying at a hotel tonight, she said finally. I can't be here. That's probably best. The locks will be changed tomorrow. You're really going to throw me out of my own house? I'm going to secure marital property pending the divorce proceedings. The house is in both our names, but you forfeited any claim to moral authority about what happens to it. She gathered some clothes and toiletries, moving through the house like a ghost of the woman I'd once loved. At the door, she turned back one last time. Tom, I really am sorry. I know you are, Kristina. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry there are consequences. You're sorry your Tuesday routine is over. I'm sorry I hurt you. If that were true, you would have stopped hurting me months ago. She left without another word, and I locked the door behind her. I sat in my home office, surrounded by the Tuesday files that documented 6 months of lies and betrayal. Tomorrow, I would begin the process of rebuilding my life without the woman who'd chosen to destroy our marriage one Tuesday at a time. But tonight, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. The lies were over. The truth was documented. The consequences were in motion. Diagnosis. The only sick thing in this family was a marriage whose symptoms she hid behind fictional children who never needed healing. I spoke these words aloud to the empty house, and for the first time in 6 months, they were the complete truth. Tuesdays, it turned out, really were for liars. But this was the last Tuesday that would ever matter to my marriage. The storm was over, the reckoning was complete, and Thomas Waverly was finally free.